How's it going, everyone? I'm Sean and welcome back to the channel. So you want to get into guitar building? Well, it is a big wide world to get into. So where do you start? If you've looked into it at all or watched people building guitars, like myself, then you'll notice that we use tools. We use a lot of different tools. So where do you start? How do you choose and decide what to prioritize for yourself when you're just getting started? Well, welcome to my essential tooling guides for guitar building. In this video, I will go through what 7 hand tools I consider essential for guitar building, plus a bonus one at the end, which is nice to have, but not exactly essential. So, grab yourself a nice hot cup of tea, coffee, whatever, get comfortable, and let's go. Starting off at the top of the list, probably the most important thing here, but potentially not the sexiest on the list, is marking out and measuring. So you're going to need a good ruler, at least 2 realistically. I would suggest get a smaller ruler. I really like 150mm 6-inch size and a meter rule. Being able to lay out everything accurately and correctly is essential. You are not going to have a good time building guitars if you can't lay out a line properly. Bundled in with this, I'm also putting in a square. Just anything decent, an engineer square, combination square, it doesn't matter what it is, so long as it is actually square. In line with the rulers, being able to mark things out, make sure they are square, make sure they are flat, straight, all of this is just necessary to get good results. Next up on my list, some of my favorite ones, hand planes. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, but I'm going to do another video a bit more in depth on specifically which hand planes I recommend you get and why. But short form is going to be, you're probably going to want a jointer and a block plane at the barest minimum. It's also nice to have some kind of a smoothing plane, but that's totally up to you. If nothing else, being able to true up an edge before you glue them is just an absolute necessity to get those really beautiful tight joints. I have a video on how to actually use a hand plane to joint a guitar body if you're interested. Hand planes are also pretty essential as a shooting board for being able to square up sides to joint tops, anything like that. They are just a really, really good general tool that you should absolutely have in your toolkit for building guitars. After that, kind of in line, but also not really, you should have some chisels and ideally also some gouges. I'm bundling these together because they are fairly similar, realistically, at the end of the day. As I progress through my own career and everything, I find chisels are just indispensable now. They're a good, finely tuned set of chisels, well sharpened. This is an important one for hand planes and chisels. You need to sharpen them. A blunt chisel is a dangerous chisel, and a blunt hand plane just won't do anything. I would recommend even a basic set of chisels. You know, you can get them usually in sets of 4 that go from 1 inch to 1/4 inch, so 6mm to 25mm, depending on your preferences. And gouges are just good in general. At the very least, a nice inside ground gouge to be able to open up corners or just tidy things up. Pretty necessary, add them to your list. Next up, I've got another not very sexy one. You're gonna need some kind of sanding blocks, leveling beams, just any kind of substrate to stick sandpaper to so that you can sand more efficiently and effectively. Sanding by hand is just not going to cut it. Wrapping a bit of sandpaper around your finger, trying to polish something flat, that's not going to work. Without sticking sandpaper to some kind of substrate, sandpaper is pretty much only going to round things out. And if you ever want to get nice crisp edges on things, you're going to need blocks. You can absolutely use things like MDF. You know, I have over here, one of my handiest sanding blocks. That is just a bit of 9mm MDF. Super, super useful. Moving on, scrapers. This is another, I feel, quite polarizing one. That again, you need to be able to sharpen effectively and sharpen well. A blunt scraper is just a bit of metal. A sharp scraper is one of the best tools you can use to get a fabulous finished surface on your wood. Scrapers are second to none. They really are. A scraped surface is always going to be so much nicer than a sanded surface. That's just science, probably. Definitely recommend getting a variety of them. They're cheap. You buy a pack of them for I don't know how much, with a gooseneck and a straight one. That's all you really need. And they're just so handy and so many different circumstances. If you need to just finely tune an edge to get two things to meet perfectly, scrapers. If you're doing binding, you need to bring the binding down afterwards, scrapers. If you have some glue that gets into end grain and sanding that's going to take 10 years, scrapers. Next up, one that I consider pretty much like top of the food chain essential here is a fret saw. You need some kind of saw, ideally with a back that is the correct size for a fret tang. Even if you buy a pre-slotted fretboard, when you radius that fretboard, chances are you're going to want to reslot all of the files to make sure they are the correct height. You can do that height setting with a guide on the side of the saw like this one here, or you can just simply lay it out and put some masking tape along the edge. Either option is perfectly valid, but you're going to need a fret saw. You can buy specific fret saws from plenty of different places, or sometimes you can find older dovetail saws that are the correct size, but you absolutely have to get that size right. If this is too wide, then your frets are just simply going to fall out. They can't get enough purchase. If this saw is too narrow, then your frets are going to have too much force and friction to put them in, and you can risk damaging your work, or else the frets just don't go in, pure and simple. Lastly on my list of essential tools. This is one that absolutely any video you watch of guys going, these are the most essential tools, your first tools to buy, blah, blah, blah. This is always in these lists, and for very, very good reason. It's a Japanese saw RASP. These guys for carving necks are the bee's knees. Yeah, there's no other way to put it. This is the most effective tool to carve a neck by hand. It is quick, it is efficient, you're able to kind of keep an eye on what you're actually doing, you have good control over it. It's got a fine side and a coarse side, so you can control how much you take at a time. If you're a bit heavy-handed, use the fine side. If you've got a lot of material to take out, use the coarse side. Fabulous tools. Lumping in with that, I'm also going to be saying IWASAKI files. They leave a beautiful finish, and they come in a whole different variety of orientations, from flat, big, small, medium, rounded, curved, all kinds of things. They are super handy. If you are buying them, I would recommend to get the large rectangular one and the medium-sized round one. They are invaluable for fine-tuning a neck carve or for carving your volute. Anything like this, small details, if you're doing carves on the body, anything like that, they are just fabulous tools to have. And realistically, bang for your buck on these things, they're probably second to none. So definitely grab some of them, put them into your toolkit, have them, keep them, love them. They will last you a long time. Finally, bonus round. This is one that you don't need. You just don't. There's no two ways to put it, but they are super, super handy. And that is a Japanese pull saw. I really like the Ryoba ones, which are double-sided. On one side you have a rip-cut tooth pattern for quickly ripping along the grain, and the other side you've got a cross-cut pattern for cross-cutting the grain. With this saw you can cut pretty much anything. They are super handy, versatile saws that you will find so many uses for in guitar building. Again, there are plenty of ways to get around using these things, but it's so nice to have one of these. They're not that expensive. I would say if you've got a little bit of extra money in your budget, pick one of these guys up. Anyway, guys, that is my essential list of hand tools. If you watch the whole video right to the end, hopefully that means you enjoyed it in some way, shape or form, in which case I'd really appreciate if you dropped a like down below. If you like the vibe of what I'm doing here, subscribe to the channel. I'm all about providing good educational content as well as entertainment content, so hopefully there's a bit of something there for you, and subscribing will provide some value to you. It doesn't cost anything, it helps me out, tells YouTube that, hey, this guy's doing something right, and, well, makes me feel good about myself. And at the end of the day, that's always nice too. If you got any questions, opinions, whatever, leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. I do read pretty much all the comments. I may be slow at responding at times, but I do my best. If you think I've missed anything that you've seen me use, let me know below, And I will either give you a good reason why I don't have it in here or a bad reason like I forgot. It happens. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. See you all again real soon.